Welcome into Survivor Analytics. I am your host, Clyde, and today we are starting a new tradition on this page that I'm calling the Survivor Analytics Awards. This idea originally came from the YouTube channel Survivor Gumball, so I highly recommend checking out that creator. But anyways, this is an opportunity for me to reflect on the past year of Survivor. In the past 12 months, we have covered 3 seasons on the Survivor Analytics podcast, those being Survivor 46, Survivor 47, and Survivor Cook Islands. I thought about including Cook Islands players in these awards, but since that season's initial air date did not happen in 2024, I'm going to exclude it entirely. This means that all of the awards given out today will go to contestants and moments from the 2 most recent seasons of US Survivor. We have a total of 10 awards to run through, so let's start with the Best Tribe. There are multiple ways of defining the best Survivor tribe. You could give this award to the most successful tribe of the last year in terms of immunity challenges. In my review, though, I focus primarily on entertainment value. That encompasses not only the individual characters on a respective tribe, but also their interactions in the pre-merge. The best new era tribes create memorable moments in that first section of the season. Before jumping into my pick, we can cover one honorable mention that I'll give to the Gada tribe from Survivor 47. There's multiple big characters carrying this group from an entertainment perspective. Obviously, you got Andy, who's the primary underdog of the season. We see him struggle in that first immunity challenge, but he slowly transforms into one of the biggest players in the game. There's also Rachel, who obviously goes on to win the season. Then there's Sam, whose background in sports commentary leads to some engaging confessionals. I remember his comedic segment during the auction money hunt, where he narrates Andy as he fails to find any cash. In terms of tribal dynamics, I feel that we get some great moments with this group. There's the entire storyline of Andy finding the Beware advantage, only for him to put it back and have it stolen by Sam. There's Sam listing off all of the foods he's never tried before. There's the disputes between Sam and Annika regarding camp life, which peaks with Annika's elimination in the pre-merge. You also get some tension in the premiere between Rachel and Andy, where Andy is operating as this overbearing ally. That later culminates in Andy's blindside at the final 6. Gada is a memorable tribe, but there's another group on Survivor 47 that surpasses them in my opinion. My selection for the best tribe of 2024 is Lavo. What an incredible cast of characters brought together on Lavo. I feel like every member of this tribe adds something valuable to the show. The poster child of Lavo is clearly Rome, who's potentially the biggest villain of the new era. In the pre-merge, we see the rivalry between Rome and Saul. When Saul is positioned on the bottom of the tribe, Rome follows him around camp to ensure that he's not searching for an idol. Speaking of Saul, he ends up becoming the fan favorite of the season, partially due to his work as the heroic figure combating Rome. Lavo also introduces us to Genevieve, who is invisible through the first 3 episodes of the season, accumulating 3 total confessionals in that stretch. Episode 4 serves as Genevieve's breakout, where she comes forward as this silent assassin sniping Keyshawn out of the game. The least interesting player on Lavo, in my opinion, is Aisha, which is absurd considering that I was the most excited to watch her going into the season. Obviously, there's an element of bias there as I watched Aisha for years on RHAP, but I think it speaks to the quality of this tribe when she is the least integral to their story. From a strategic perspective, Lavo delivers with 2 elite tribal councils in the pre-merge. They're 2 of the best blindsides on Survivor 47, especially the Keyshawn boot in episode 4. So for me, this award was not particularly close. I got Lavo as the best tribe of the last year. We can follow that up with the worst tribe of 2024. I can give a quick honorable mention to Yanu from Survivor 46. I feel that there's a lot of conflicting opinions surrounding Yanu because there are 3 elite characters on this tribe in Kenzie, Tiffany, and Q. At the same time, there's the Banu factor. Banu eats up so much of the early screen time on Survivor 46 to the point where I look at those first 4 episodes of the season as some of the worst Survivor of the new era. That's not to say that Banu is this horrible character, it's just really one-sided in his direction. I didn't roll with Yanu as the worst tribe of this year because that trio of Kenzie, Q, and Tiffany provided some entertaining moments. Instead, the worst tribe of 2024, according to me, is Tuku from Survivor 47. Through the pre-merge of that season, there's not a lot going on Tuku. They attend just one tribal council, which is a pretty straightforward vote against TK. My issue with this tribe is their surrounding edit, as Survivor 47 paints many of these contestants as one-dimensional. Kyle is your challenge beast of the season. Gabe is your early season villain that calls Caroline and Sue his wounded birds. Caroline, while a very positive presence on the show, is very under-edited, and it feels like we don't learn anything about her until the round before her elimination. Tiana doesn't get a lot of screen time either. I feel like when I look back at Survivor 47, I won't remember any pre-merge moments from the Tuku tribe, which is partially attributed to their challenge success. I still consider them the worst tribe of the 6 that we met this year. On to my third award, which is the best character. So like the best tribe, this award is based primarily on entertainment level rather than player quality. I'll have an award later in this list for the best player of the year. Obviously, a best character award is completely subjective, as my opinion of a great character might fundamentally differ from yours, but let's still have fun with it. First honorable mention for me is Rome. I said it earlier, but I look at Rome as the biggest villain of the new era. He is someone that actively antagonizes his competition, which we see when he follows Saul around camp and later strong-arms him into not playing his shot in the dark. Rome is also a flashy player, someone that creates chaos at Tribal Council. He plays his boat steal in the second Lavo Tribal. I feel that Rome had an entertaining downfall at the Mergatory as well. I love the contrast in that episode. We watch multiple confident confessionals from Rome, which are immediately followed up by segments of other players mutually agreeing to knock him out. So I know that everyone is not a fan of Rome, but I think he's a unique character deserving of an honorable mention. Next honorable mention is Venus, who, like Rome, served as an antagonistic figure on Survivor 46. Maybe I'm just desperate for villains on Survivor, but I really enjoyed Venus's time on the show. She was a bit of a social pariah through that season, butting heads with multiple contestants like Soda, Hunter, Tevin, and Q. There's a bit of delusion with Venus that I always found entertaining. For example, she fully believes that she was the orchestrator of the Soda blindside, which simply wasn't true. I also gotta note Venus's elimination at the final 7, where she goes out with an idol in her pocket. Last honorable mention should not surprise anyone who follows our podcast. I'm giving it to Andy. Admittedly, this is a biased pick, as I chose Andy with the first overall pick of our fantasy draft. So I've been ride or die with him before the airing of the season. I don't know if Andy on his own is this incredible character, but I think that the edit has a lot of fun with him. He's portrayed as the spider building a web of alliances. He's shown in an Ocean's 11 themed montage assembling Operation Italy. There's also the he's all that moment in the post-merge, where we get the slow motion shot of Andy taking off his glasses. Andy's storyline on 47 is pretty compelling as well. He starts the season on a horrible note as he falls apart in the first immunity challenge, but he survives that round and eventually evolves into one of the best strategic players on the cast. So I'm an Andy fan, but there was one character that was even better. It's Q from Survivor 46. I see Q as one of the wildest characters of the new era. So many memorable moments from Q on this season. You obviously have his iconic Q skirt, which he rocked to many tribal councils. There's his signature catchphrases of cancel Christmas and big mistake. Q's arc on 46 is interesting as well, as he starts the season in the majority on the original Yanu tribe. He then loses all of his power in the early merge, and he straight up requests that the rest of the cast votes him out. Q eventually recovers and puts himself in a solid spot up until his blindside at the final 6, where like Venus, he's voted out with an idol in his pocket. So I feel like Q is such a distinct character from this year. He's someone that I fully expect to get the call for Survivor 50. That takes us to the fourth award of the year, the Best Strategic Move. For this one, I'm looking at both the degree of difficulty as well as the long-term outcomes of a strategic decision. First honorable mention will go to Genevieve for the Keyshawn blindside in the pre-merge of Survivor 47. In that round, Genevieve is able to convince Rome to use his newly acquired vote steal to knock out Keyshawn, who prior to that tribal council dominated the Lavo tribe alongside Teeny. What makes this move so impressive to me is the fact that it preserved the Saul-Rome rivalry. Had Lavo attended another pre-merge tribal council, Genevieve is completely safe, and it's one of those guys going home. I wouldn't describe this play as the best move of the last year, as it damaged Genevieve's relationship with Teeny and tied her to Rome, who always presented himself as an unreliable ally. He ends up going out in the early merge, and Genevieve is left with few other strategic options. I'll also give a shout out to Rachel for the Andy blindside at the final 6 of Survivor 47. We see Rachel really swinging for the fences in that tribal council. She spends most of tribal hyping up her game, elevating her threat level, and emphasizing this idea of her funeral, only for her to play an idol and knock Andy out of the game. That move was a major stamp on Rachel's resume, and it ensured that she beats anyone in a jury vote outside maybe Genevieve. Still, I take issue with the fact that Rachel does not even get her way in that round. According to postseason interviews, Rachel wanted to use her idol to blindside Sam, while Sue was pushing for Andy. I think that voting out Sam there would have been a much better move for Rachel, as she was in a spot where her only real route to the end was winning challenges, and Andy was a complete non-threat in that arena. But anyways, I decided to give the award for Best Strategic Move of 2024 to Operation Italy, the Caroline vote at the final 7 of Survivor 47. This move is in serious consideration for one of the best strategic plays of the new era. Through this vote, Andy is able to flip the entire power structure of the game in his favor. Going into the final 7, Andy was positioned in the majority but on the bottom of the underdog alliance. Had Andy remained loyal to that group, they likely vote out Sam and Genevieve, and he's taken out in 5th place. Instead, he flips to work with the bottom feeders in taking out Caroline through a plurality vote. There are so many difficult aspects of this move. First, you have Andy convincing the underdog alliance to not only split the vote, but do so in a way where he works in the majority of that split. If Andy is placed in the minority of the split, then his flip is unsuccessful. Second, you have the fact that Andy just attended reward with the bottom feeders. The other players knew that Andy just spent an afternoon receiving pitches from Sam and Genevieve, yet they still agreed to his plan. And third, there's the insane number of advantages held by the underdog alliance. That group held 2 idols and a vote block, yet Andy made them feel comfortable enough to not play any of them. Looking long term, I think this move does a lot for Andy's winning prospects as well. Operation Italy inspires Teeny to flip to that alliance, which sets up Andy perfectly to knock out Rachel at 6, then Genevieve at 5. The only real fallout that I see from Operation Italy is that Andy loses the trust of Sue, which, to be fair, contributes to his demise at the final 6. At the end of the day, though, I think this was the optimal play for Andy. It's the best strategic play of the last year. That takes us to the worst strategic move of 2024. These are the actively bad decisions that damage contestants' long-term winning potentials. First, I considered giving this award to Kyle's decision to knock out Gabe at the final 9 of Survivor 47. Entering that round, Kyle had 3 individual immunity wins under his belt, and he knew that the other players were already eyeing him up as a threat. When he wins his 4th individual immunity of the season, he makes the crucial mistake of voting out his only potential shield in Gabe. Admittedly, pushing the target in another direction was a difficult task for Kyle due to the number of remaining Tuku contestants, but it does not take away from the fact that by knocking out Gabe, Kyle served himself up as the biggest target at the final 8. When he loses immunity in that round, there was no one left for Kyle to push in front of him as a shield. I'll also give an honorable mention to Hunter for his decision to not play his immunity idol at the final 9 of Survivor 46. He's taken out in that tribal council with the idol in his pocket. There were multiple players on 46 voted out under similar circumstances, but I think that Hunter's move was slightly worse given the context of the game. At the final 10, Hunter lost his #1 ally in Tevin, so he walked into the final 9 knowing that he was positioned on the bottom. Hunter also receives instructions from the majority to vote against the only other outsider in Q. It feels like Hunter has all of the necessary evidence to deduct that he would receive votes at Tribal Council, yet he still elects to sit on the idol, which ultimately results in his elimination. There were 4 total contestants voted out of 46 with idols in their pockets, but the worst instance and the worst move of the last year came from Q at the final 6. I love Q as a Survivor character. He's one of my favorite contestants of the new era, but this decision is just inexcusable. Q's idol was valid through the final five, and prior to Tribal Council, Maria tells Q that he is the target of the opposing alliance. At the end of the day, Q chooses to hold on to his idol because he believes that they have the votes of Liz and Kenzie on their side, which is completely nonsensical. Earlier in the season, Liz infamously calls out Q for not taking her on the Applebee's reward. There was very little evidence suggesting that she would want to work with him in the long term. Had Q played his idol correctly, they take out Charlie there, and Q is sitting in a great spot at the final five with the Shield and Maria to push in front of himself. From there, Q would reach the final four with a winning combination against Liz and Ben. It's the worst strategic decision of 2024 and one of the worst moves of the new era. Next award up for grabs is the most robbed player. I feel that Survivor fans always throw out this claim that a contestant was robbed on their particular season. Robbed contestants are those who are taken out of the game through circumstances outside their control, which essentially boils down to production interference. In some cases, production introduces twists that the players cannot anticipate. In other cases, production inserts advantages that ultimately screw over contestants. First honorable mention is not a huge name, but someone worth acknowledging as a robbed player. It's Tim Spicer from Survivor 46. Tim receives a pretty unlucky tribe swap in the split tribal of that season. He's thrown into a group of 6 with 3 Yanu contestants. Not only is Tim in the minority, but he's in a spot where he's forced to target one of his allies. He can either target Hunter, who was a part of his cross-tribal alliance, or he can target Ben, who he was aligned with on day 1. In the end, though, Tim chooses incorrectly as he's unwilling to flip against Ben, and the Yanu contestants respond by voting out Tim himself. I'd also throw out that Tim receives an unfortunate swap and that his side does not inherit any of the cast bottom feeders. Players like Venus and Soda entered the merge with no real allegiances, and both of them were randomly selected for the other split tribal. So I look at Tim as your traditional swap screwed player. He gets an honorable mention. Second contestant to hit on is Keyshawn from Survivor 47. Through the early game, Keyshawn was well positioned in the center of the Lavo tribe alongside Teeny. All of this falls apart in episode 4, where Keyshawn attempts to gather the numbers against Rome. Initially, it looks like Keyshawn has the votes to pull off this move. He's got the support from Teeny, as well as Saul, who butted heads with Rome throughout the season. There's 2 big wrenches thrown into Keyshawn's plan. First, Teeny goes on a journey and loses their vote, meaning that Keyshawn needed to pull Genevieve onto his side to make this move happen. Second, there is Rome's vote steal, which he acquired through pure chance in the previous episode. Genevieve ends up leaking this plan back to Rome, and Rome uses the vote steal to knock out Keyshawn in 15th place. Now, you could discredit Keyshawn in that he knew about Rome's vote steal throughout this entire saga, but that doesn't take away from the fact that Rome was lucky to have that advantage in the first place. I see Keyshawn's exit as one with many outside influences, which earns him this honorable mention. Last honorable mention is a bit of an unconventional pick, but I'm gonna go with Maria from Survivor 46. Maria is a unique case where her game is actually damaged by a lack of production interference. She enters the final 5 of that season with the most win equity, but also the biggest target on her back. Maria was in survival mode, but if she could win the final 5 immunity challenge, she could at least get an opportunity to compete in firemaking. Then, in the immunity challenge, we see Liz blatantly cheat. She works to help Kenzie defeat Maria by running onto Kenzie's section of the course and helping her acquire puzzle pieces. Production failed to call out Liz, and they later acknowledged their mistake in the final immunity challenge, where they specifically instruct players to stay in their respective lanes. If Liz does not help Kenzie in that challenge, Maria potentially earns immunity and reaches the final 4 with a serious shot at winning the season. Onto my selection for the Robbed Player Award, and when I initially decided to include this distinction, my mind immediately jumped to Tiana from Survivor 47. I feel that Tiana's elimination features the most twists that she could never anticipate. First, there's the split tribal, where she's initially in a good spot, as that group includes 5 original Tuku members, with Rachel on the outside. Tiana walks into that tribal council fully prepared for a consensus vote against Rachel. The second major twist that screws over Tiana's game is the take your pick advantage, as it enables Rachel to leave the tribal council area. That causes the other Tuku players to band together against Tiana. Now, you can definitely criticize Tiana in that she knew those other Tuku players for the entire pre-merge, yet she failed to find inroads within that group. To me, the Tiana boot proves that she was on the periphery of that tribe, and had Tuku attended another pre-merge tribal council, Tiana is the likely elimination. At the same time, I don't think that it's particularly fair that Tiana never really had the opportunity to even strategize for this scenario. There isn't a lot of time between Rachel leaving the tribal council area and the players casting their votes. So like I said at the beginning, a lot of strange circumstances surrounding this vote, which earns Tiana the Robbed Player of the Year award. Next award on the docket is the Breakout Star, which requires a bit of an explanation. Before every New Era season, we run an annual fantasy draft. There are always contestants who we doubt, and as a result, they fall to the end of the draft. Sometimes those players who none of us believe in end up dominating their seasons. So this award is meant to own up to our mistakes pre-season and give credit to those contestants who surprised us. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see each contestant's original draft position on the graphic. We have 3 honorable mentions for this award, the first being Charlie Davis from Survivor 46. Our draft room was not high on Charlie preseason. People described him as a square, and there was this general concern that he would struggle to connect with other players. That could not be further from the truth, as we see Charlie come forward as one of the best social players on the season. His alliance with Ben is particularly impressive, as Ben eventually takes Charlie to the final tribal council. I'll be talking more about Charlie's game later in this award show, so we can jump over to the next honorable mention, who just so happens to be Charlie's #1 ally in Maria. Maria was the second to last selection of our fantasy draft, and there was this consensus opinion that Maria would attempt and fail to operate as a domineering strategic figure. In reality, Maria successfully gains power in 46. We see her pull the numbers together to knock out Tiffany at the final 8. She then makes a run all the way to the final 5 with serious win equity. I think that Maria beats most of the 46 cast in a jury vote. She played much better than our league expected, which earns her the honorable mention. Third honorable mention will go to Genevieve, who did not pop on paper in our initial review. Through the first 3 episodes of the season, it looked like Genevieve was en route to an early exit, as she receives just 3 confessionals in that stretch. Everything changes with the Keyshawn blindside in episode 4, as Genevieve transforms into one of the season's power players. She showcased ability in every aspect of Survivor, eventually placing 5th in a spot where she crushes anyone in a jury vote outside of Rachel. Had challenges and advantages played out differently on 47, there is a real chance that Genevieve is the winner of the season. To no one's surprise, the award for the 2024 Breakout Star goes to Rachel. Rachel was selected in the final round of our fantasy draft, and she was the last member taken from the Gada tribe. In her preseason interviews, Rachel claimed that she wanted to find an alliance member who reminded her of her partner, which drew some concern. There were comparisons thrown around between Rachel from 47 and Jess from 46. Rachel proved herself as a much more complete player than Jess. She came forward as one of the best challenge competitors of the new era, winning 4 individual immunities and tying the women's record. Obviously, she went on to win the season, which is something that no one in our draft room anticipated. It earns her the award for Breakout Star of 2024. We can follow up the Breakout Star with the inverse version called the Draft Bust Award. These are the players that were selected highly in the first round of our fantasy draft, and all of them failed to meet expectations. First honorable mention that we can discuss is Banu, who was taken with the 2nd overall pick. I feel that the only stamp on Banu's strategic resume is the fact that he survived 2 tribal councils. Banu's run on 46 is one where he's always getting in his own way. A perfect example is his decision to leak all of his tribe's secrets during a journey, then admit to that mistake back at camp. Banu actively positions himself on the bottom of Yanu. When they attend their 3rd consecutive tribal council, Banu is so clearly on the bottom that they don't even bother holding a vote. Next draft bust honorable mention goes to Randon from Survivor 46. Randon was the third pick in our fantasy draft, and his time on Survivor is very brief as he's medically evacuated in episode 3. Prior to his boot, Randon does some impressive work in finding a beware advantage and sharing that information with Venus as a way to build trust. At the same time, Randon was not well positioned on that Nami tribe as he was outside the core alliance. Obviously, unlucky circumstances end Randon's run on that season, but I can't look past the fact that Randon was taken 3rd overall and he only lasted 3 episodes. Final honorable mention in this category goes to Jess Chung, taken 4th overall in our 46 draft. Quick side note, but it's wild that all 3 of my honorable mentions come from Survivor 46. I guess we were just off in the first round of that draft. As for Jess, she's a player that never fully found her way into the majority on the Yanu tribe. She's immediately on the outs there and largely survives their first tribal council due to the misplay of Jelinski. In episode 2, Jess is taken out over Banu, who blows up at tribal council. On top of all that, Jess is tricked into playing a fake idol, which prevented her from using her shot in the dark. It's a pretty rough performance for Jess, one that did not meet our initial expectations, which lands her in the honorable mentions. But the biggest Survivor fantasy draft bust for 2024 is TK from Survivor 47. There were high hopes for TK going into the season. On paper, TK is your prototypical challenge beast, someone that will survive the pre-merge more often than not simply on the basis of challenge strength. Instead, TK is taken out in the first Tuku Tribal Council through his own misplay. In that round, TK actively burns his relationship with Tiana, which causes her to flip against him. The only positive with TK is that he maintained an ally in Kyle that remained loyal to him to the bitter end. So I feel that TK deserves a lot of blame for his own elimination. I don't see him as a particularly great player despite his strengths in the physical side of the game, which earns him the Draft Bust Award. There's 2 awards left, both of which relate to player quality. These awards are not based solely on players' in-game performances, but rather my outlook on how these contestants would fare over multiple seasons. We can start with the worst player of the year. I'll reluctantly give an honorable mention to John Lovett from Survivor 47. The issue with John is that there are so many circumstances that play out in his favor that theoretically boost his chances of surviving his first tribal council, yet despite all of it, he's voted out at the earliest opportunity. In the premiere of Survivor 47, Andy breaks down during the immunity challenge, and he publicly throws John under the bus. Andy essentially served himself up as an easy first boot, but John was so poorly connected on Gata that they elect to vote him out in hopes of dragging Andy further in the season. We can go from one first boot to another. I'll give the next honorable mention to David Jelinski from Survivor 46. Between Jelinski and John, I think Jelinski is the worst of the two, as he's much more active in his downfall. He immediately isolates himself from the rest of the Yanu tribe by quitting the Sweat vs. Savvy challenge. He follows that up by quitting the Journeys challenge, which causes Jelinski to lose his vote. Then when he returns to camp, Jelinski admits to making deals with members of the other tribes, which paints him as an unreliable ally. He's taken out in the first Yanu Tribal Council in a unanimous vote, and I think that Jelinski deserves the majority of blame for his own elimination. I don't have a lot of trust in Jelinski identifying the optimal move in any stage of the game, which lands him in this honorable mentions group. Third honorable mention will go to Jess Chung from Survivor 46. Like these other contestants, Jess never really finds her inroads on her initial tribe. She only survives the first Yanu Tribal Council due to the misplay of Jelinski. Then in the second Yanu Tribal, it's a unanimous vote against Jess, which really speaks to her poor positioning within that group. What's even worse is the fact that Banu blows up at Tribal Council, yet the majority alliance still chooses to take out Jess over Banu. Jess is also shown struggling with the survival side of the game, and it seemed like she was mentally checked out by the second episode. All of that's to say, Jess is not a great player of Survivor. But anyways, I'm giving the Worst Player of the Year award to Banu. I think that Banu lacks a foundational understanding of the game. Banu maintains this belief that by being honest with his fellow castaways, he will gain their trust regardless of the content of that honesty. In the pre-merge, we see him spill the Yanu tribe's secrets on a journey, which is not a bad move on its own. The issue is that Banu admits to this betrayal back at camp, which completely isolates him from the rest of the tribe. We also see Banu struggling to keep secrets in the second Yanu Tribal Council, where he openly admits to targeting Jess. He is such a horrible liar that we literally get segments of the other Yanu contestants training Banu to answer questions prior to Tribal. The only attribute elevating Banu from a player ranking perspective is his value as a physical competitor. I get the sense that Banu only survives 2 Tribal Councils due to his potential in Tribal challenges. I just don't have any confidence in Banu ever winning a season of Survivor. I could see another contestant dragging him deep into the game as an easy beat. In fact, we see Q considering pulling Banu into the post-merge for that exact purpose. But I worry that Banu is so inept strategically that he would actively burn any potential route to the end. He's the worst player of the last year and one of the worst contestants of the new era. The final award of the year is the Best Player. First, I'd want to say that no one from Survivor 46 or Survivor 47 landed within my top 5 new era contestants. With that said, there were still some great competitors across those seasons. We can start with the winner of Survivor 47 in Rachel. Now, I was pretty critical of Rachel's game throughout our coverage of her season. I still believe that there are some foundational missing elements in Rachel as a Survivor player. I think that she struggles to navigate into a majority alliance. Her bond with Annika is broken up in the second Gata Tribal Council, and her underdog alliance falls apart after just one round due to her decision to split the vote at the final 7. I also see Rachel as someone that struggles in terms of threat level management, as she relies on immunity for 4 straight rounds in the end. Again, all those factors are still major concerns for me. What earns Rachel an honorable mention is her ability to survive on the bottom with win equity. She's probably the best new era winner from a physical perspective, racking up 4 individual immunity challenge wins. She also crushes anyone from the post-merge in a jury vote outside of Genevieve. Further, we see some innovative strategic play from Rachel between her use of the shot in the dark at the final 11 and her idle play at the final 6. Keeping up with 47, I consider Genevieve, who I actually perceive as a better holistic player than Rachel. I feel that we have a larger sample size with Genevieve in terms of her operating in a wider range of strategic positions. In the pre-merge, she runs the Lavo tribe, pulling off the Keyshawn blindside in their second tribal council. Then in the post-merge, we see Genevieve survive on the bottom purely through her social play. She sticks around at the final 9 and final 8 in spots where other contestants were seriously targeting her. Now, Genevieve definitely deserves criticism for her positioning on the bottom, as her hyper-aggressive move to knock out Saul at Final 10 causes the other players to no longer trust her. From a social perspective, I have a lot of confidence in Genevieve winning a jury vote. While Genevieve continues to highlight this storyline of pushing other players away on an emotional level, I still think she reaches the end with a lot of win equity. Outside of Rachel, Genevieve easily wins the game in any other combination. Then on the physical side, Genevieve wins a key immunity at the final 6, proving that she has that ability to pull off a challenge win in the event that all else fails. I see Genevieve as a well-rounded Survivor player, someone that's just outside my top 10 contestants of the new era. The last honorable mention will go to the other winner of Survivor from this year, in Kenzie. Immediately following her win, I was not very high on Kenzie as a player, but I've grown on her over time. She's in the conversation for one of the best social players of the new era. I have a lot of confidence in Kenzie's ability to place advocates like Tiffany on the jury. The fact that Kenzie defeats Charlie, a player with, in my opinion, a much better strategic resume, speaks volumes to her social game. That social play also creates a lot of safety for Kenzie in her navigation through the season, where outside the Final 4 fire-making challenge, she is never seriously targeted in the post-merge. Strategically, I think that, like Genevieve, Kenzie is someone that's proven to excel from both the top and the bottom. In the pre-merge, we see her function at the core of the Yanu tribe alongside Tiffany. She then enters the post-merge down in numbers according to original tribal lines, but she's able to build new alliances that carry her through the back section of the game. Then physically, Kenzie is solid, winning 2 out of 8 individual immunities. I look at Kenzie as the second best player of the last year. For me though, the best contestant that we saw in the year 2024 is Charlie Davis. I see Charlie's performance on 46 as one of the best losing finalist games in the history of the show. It's a run where Charlie shows a lot of strategic awareness as he's running the game in a way that maximizes his pathways to the end. Charlie is an expert in positioning. He's in the majority alliance with consistent agency every step of the way for the entire season. I feel that some people downplayed Charlie's strategic ability, claiming that he hid behind Maria for the first half of the game, but there are clear examples of Charlie outplaying Maria. In the early game, Charlie is able to convince Maria to knock out her original Sega allies in Gem and Mariah, while Charlie maintained Ben as a loyal number. I also find Charlie's ability to place shields in front of him very impressive. His decision at the final 8 to prop up Maria as the leader of the Tiffany boot piques her threat level and strengthens Charlie's bonds with contestants outside that alliance. By the time Charlie reaches the final 6, he's got 2 obvious shields to knock out in Maria and Q. Then at the final 4, we see Charlie's social game shine, where despite the edit highlighting the connection between Kenzie and Ben, when Ben wins final immunity, he elects to take Charlie to the final tribal, primarily due to their friendship. Charlie excels physically as well, winning 2 individual immunities. I just have a lot of confidence in Charlie doing well on any random season of the show. I think he's a fringe top 5 player of the new era and a top 50 contestant in the history of the franchise. So there are all of the 2024 Survivor Analytics Awards. Thank you so much for listening. Looking forward, we will continue our live Survivor coverage in the month of February. Survivor 48 is set to premiere on February 26th. The next 2 months will serve as our off season. I'm currently working on my ranking of every winning game in Survivor history, and I plan to release that in 4 separate segments sometime in the next month or so. But again, thank you for listening, and let me know your thoughts on these selections.